Hi, this is Prasheel coming to you from Mumbai, and you're listening to the very first episode of our podcast, the Equity Master Stock Market Wrap Up. In today's edition, I'll be taking you through what moved the markets over the week. So let's jump right in. TCS hit an all-time high after the company announced its quarterly results. More news from tech stocks. HCL Technologies announced a 40 billion rupee buyback plan. The Idea-Vodafone merger finally received its regulatory approval after it was stuck in regulatory limbo. Looking at the global markets, Donald Trump is threatening another round of tariffs that could lead to a full-blown trade war. Coming back home, retail inflation hit a 5-month high in June. We also have the CEO of Equity Master, Rahul Goyal, sharing his views about our podcast initiative. So stay tuned for that. Now, a quick look at the broader markets. Asian and European indices were more or less flat over the week as market participants remained nervous about the effects of Donald Trump's latest tariff threats. Back home, after a volatile week of trading, the BSE Sensex hit a new all-time high, supported by a sharp rally in IT stocks. With the markets out of the way, let's look at the key stories in focus this week. TCS was among the top gainers in the markets this week and hit a record high after the company reported its best sequential quarterly growth in nearly 4 years. While all of the company's segments did well, the banking, financial services, and insurance vertical led the charge after being dormant for a long time. TCS's revenue breached the $5 billion mark as it grew 10% compared to the same period last year. The recovery in TCS started during the October-December quarter and gained momentum as the company won a few large deals in January-March period. Moving on to more news from tech stocks, HCL Technologies announced that it would buy back shares worth 50 billion rupees, offering rupees 1,100 per share. This means that the buyback will be at a premium of around 20% from the current closing price. HCL is not the only tech company announcing its buyback. HCL's announcement follows TCS's last month when the Tata Group company announced a 160 billion rupees buyback plan. Moving on, the Idea-Vodafone merger, which was announced last year, is set to become effective soon as the Department of Telecom gave a conditional nod to the merger. However, before the two telecom giants begin to operate as a single company, the telecom regulators want both the companies to furnish bank guarantees worth 72 billion rupees towards one-time spectrum charges. Notably, the Vodafone India and Idea Cellular merger is set to create India's largest telecom operator, surpassing even Bharti Airtel. The top operator will have a revenue market share of around 37% and over 430 million subscribers. It will be interesting to track the progress of this new telecom leader and whether it can sustain the pole position in the hyper-competitive telecom industry. Moving on to news from the global markets. In the continuing escalations into a full-blown trade war, the United States government announced that it was starting the process to slap 10% tariffs on another $200 billion worth of Chinese goods as soon as September. Notably, the US President Donald Trump vowed to hit back on a growing list of products after China retaliated in kind for the first round of 25% tariffs on $34 billion worth of imports that Washington imposed last week. Now, Trump is supporting his trade war rhetoric on the plank of reducing the trade deficit with China. In March 2018, Trump said this, quote, "Last year we lost $500 billion on trade with China," end quote. But this isn't true. According to the US Census Bureau, the actual trade deficit is $375 billion. Also, running a trade deficit isn't a bad thing. If trade surplus was a measure of success, then why aren't countries like Nigeria, Malta, and Azerbaijan faring well? These countries enjoyed trade surpluses last year. The Trump view is basically that exports are good, they're like revenues, and imports are bad, they're like costs. However, this approach doesn't consider that both imports and exports are beneficial for a country's economy. Nevertheless, at the current juncture, trade wars have created some fear in the markets. Coming back home, inflation fears seem to be creeping up as retail inflation is seen to rise. Inflation measured by the Consumer Price Index stood at a 5-month high at 5% in June. This was higher than the 4.87% recorded in the previous month. The rise in inflation comes mostly on the back of rising crude oil prices. Now, retail inflation measured by the Consumer Price Index is the main price gauge that the RBI tracks. June's data is an indication that prices are slowly inching towards the Apex Bank's upper tolerance level of inflation at 6%. Rising inflation in June keeps alive chances for a further rate hike in August. The RBI governor-led Monetary Policy Committee will meet soon to review its interest rate regime. Well, that's the update for the week. So before we end today, we have Rahul Goel, the CEO of Equity Master, sharing his views about the podcast. Hi Rahul, welcome on board.
Thank you, Prasheel. I'm very happy that you have taken this initiative to launch a podcast. I want to put this in context. Equity Master was born out of a vision to empower individual investors with honest opinions. We were never intended to be a website. In fact, if you go back in our history, we started with publishing a book. And it took us in various places, and even now we could publish a book. We published a book, then we used to publish CDs. When the internet happened, we were of course on the internet. And then when we could do conferences, we did conferences. So I think the more we commit ourselves to our mission, the more we have to be sure we are present and available to our readers on any stroke, all the possible platforms that they are present on and are comfortable with. And like we all have seen that, podcasts are becoming very critical. People are now relying on podcasts sometimes as their primary source of information. And given that context, it makes a lot of sense for you all to try, with this Indian stock market wrap-up podcast. I think people may be tempted to think that a stock market roundup is basic, but I think the more I look around and the more I read, I find that the quality of opinion, even in basic reporting, is clearly missing out there. I look forward to listening to your podcast. I know it's going to be of great quality, great value add. I understand you're going to be inviting the Equity Master editors to talk on these podcasts, and I think that'll be wonderful. There's all great stuff to look forward to, and I understand you're doing this weekly, and so I'm going to look forward to your next issue or edition. I don't know what they call it in podcasts, but I look forward to that, and congratulations and all the best.
Thanks a lot, Rahul. We are really excited about this, and I hope our listeners are too. Well, that's all from us today. Now, before signing off, we would like to know if you like the idea of podcasts. Is there anything specific you want us to cover? As Rahul mentioned earlier, we'll also be talking to the editors here at Equity Master. So if you have any questions for them, you can surely write into us. We would love your feedback. Just visit equitymaster.com and drop us a line. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you and happy investing.